My college psychology professor gave us an assignment: text your parents "I love you" and record their reaction. Since both of my parents died years ago, I took the chance to send it to Julian, my adoptive uncle and guardian. The chat window showed typing on and off, but nothing came through for the longest time. 2 hours later, he finally replied, "Don't start having thoughts you shouldn't have." He stripped away every bit of affection he had ever shown me. He blocked my number on Snapchat. He even told his assistant, Marcus, that he never wanted to hear another update about my life. Security guard at Vance Group blocked me from entering the building to see him. Mr. Vance's orders: "Hazel, you're blacklisted." He said he'd rather let a stray dog in than you. Whenever I happened to cross his path, he would immediately turn around and walk away. This went on for 6 months until I was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. In my final days, just to stop him from treating me like a stranger, I agreed to go on a blind date with Tristan, a guy Julian had set me up with. For the first time in months, Julian spoke to me with a hint of gentleness. "How are things going with Tristan? Are you two planning the wedding yet?" "It's going well." The tears in my eyes were threatening to spill over. I couldn't bear to ruin this rare, peaceful conversation. So, I described the wedding of my dreams, planning it. The venue will be themed with lavender. My favorite. The ring will be a purple diamond shaped like a lavender blossom. The more he listened, the tighter his brows furrowed. Finally, as if he couldn't stand listening to me anymore, he cut me off. "As long as it's being planned, just remember, Hazel, I will always be your uncle. We will always be family. And this place will always be your home." He looked around my room, which was already half empty, and added, "Have you moved your things to Tristan's place? That's fine. Whatever you left behind, I'll have someone buy you new ones." Sharp needle, like pain, pierced my heart. I forced a smile and shook my head. I probably won't be coming back here to live anyway. Honestly, it wasn't that I wouldn't come back often. I was never coming back. And my bags weren't at Tristan's. They had already been shipped overseas. Dr. Miller had scheduled me with a lung cancer specialist in Switzerland in 3 days, on the day of Julian's wedding to his fiancée, Victoria. I would leave this place for good. Whether the surgery succeeded or failed, I would stay in Switzerland forever. Julian's face darkened slightly. He looked like he wanted to say something else. I spoke quickly before he could. "Julian, do you know what kind of flowers Victoria likes?" "Cherry blossoms," he replied instantly. Then a look of suspicion crept into his eyes. "Why are you asking?" That look was like an icicle, freezing me to the core. He was probably worried that I would be childish again and do something to ruin things for his fiancée. I looked away, staring out the window at the lavender field in the yard, the one Julian had planted with his own hands years ago. My voice was so soft it almost drifted away in the wind. "I just wanted to get a wedding gift for you and Victoria." He waved his hand coldly. "Don't bother. She doesn't need anything." I lowered my head, a bitter smile forming on my lips. Right. I had forgotten again. Dr. Miller said the cancer had metastasized to my brain, and I would start forgetting things. I forgot that when I was a kid, Julian would do anything to make me happy, no matter how ridiculous my requests were. When I once said I wanted to see a real castle, he bought a plot of land in the suburbs and built a European-style estate just for me. I also forgot that I had seen what he looked like when he truly loved someone with him around. Victoria obviously didn't need anything from me. I just wanted to show a little gratitude for all the years he had raised me. We stood there in silence. The awkwardness stretched between us. The night wind blew in with a chill, making me shiver. Ever since I got sick, my body had become extremely sensitive to the cold. "Julian, I'm a bit tired. I'm going to head to bed." I turned around. I could feel his gaze heavy on my back until the bedroom door shut him out. When I woke up the next morning, my mind was a complete blank. I couldn't even remember what had happened yesterday. It wasn't until I checked my phone and saw the reminders, 2 days until departure, and to-do list for today, that I realized what I had to do. Finally hired workers to dig up that lavender field and replaced it with cherry blossom trees that were just about to bloom. I took some heavy-duty cough suppressants before meeting Tristan. Since I had decided to leave, I shouldn't lead anyone on. I told him honestly about my diagnosis and my plan to go to Switzerland for treatment. Surprise flashed across Tristan's eyes, quickly followed by genuine pity. Does Julian know about this? I tried H. The plane disappeared into the clouds. And Hazel disappeared from Julian's world. At least, that was what Julian believed. The wedding reception had barely begun when Tristan approached him. Julian stood beneath the crystal chandeliers, surrounded by investors, politicians, family friends, and reporters. Everyone was congratulating him. Everyone except Tristan. Mr. Vance. Julian turned. Where's Hazel? The smile disappeared from Julian's face. What? Where is Hazel? Something cold settled in his stomach. She's upstairs. Tristan stared at him for several seconds. Then he slowly shook his head. She's gone. Julian's expression changed. What do you mean, gone? She left for the airport this morning. The champagne glass in Julian's hand stopped halfway to his lips. Why? Tristan looked at him with something dangerously close to anger. You really don't know? Julian's jaw tightened. Know what? Tristan pulled an envelope from inside his jacket. This. He handed it over. Julian opened it. The moment he saw Hazel's signature, his fingers went numb. It was a share transfer agreement. Every share Hazel had inherited from her parents was being transferred to him. All of it. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Thank you for raising me. Julian stared at those 6 words. His heart began pounding. Where did she get this? Her parents' trust. Why would she give it to me? Tristan's expression hardened. Because she thought she owed you. Julian looked up. Thought. Tristan took a breath. Because Hazel is dying. The room seemed to tilt. What did you say? Lung cancer. Late stage. It metastasized to her brain. Julian didn't move. The noise around him faded. The music. The laughter. The clinking glasses. Everything disappeared. Only Tristan's voice remained. She's flying to Zurich for treatment. Julian's face drained of color. When? This morning. Julian looked toward the enormous wedding doors. How long has she known? 6 months. 6 months. The same 6 months he'd spent avoiding her. 6 months since she'd sent him that message. I love you. 6 months since he'd stared at those 3 words until something inside him broke. 6 months since he'd replied cruelly because he believed what he was doing was necessary. He remembered every word. Don't start having thoughts you shouldn't have. Have some self-respect. Stop clinging to me like cheap gum. His stomach twisted. He had thought pushing her away would protect her. Instead, he'd made her believe she was unwanted. Tristan's voice became quieter. She didn't tell you because she thought knowing wouldn't change anything. Julian's eyes reddened. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because you made it very clear you didn't want to hear anything about her. Julian closed his eyes. Marcus, his assistant. The day he'd ordered him never to mention Hazel again. The security guards. The blacklist. Every time Hazel had appeared somewhere, Julian had turned away. He had convinced himself that if he acted cruel enough, she would eventually let go. He hadn't known she was already letting go of life. Where is she now? Probably in the air. Julian grabbed his phone. He opened Hazel's contact. The screen showed nothing. Blocked. He tried calling. Nothing. Again. Nothing. His breathing became uneven. Then he remembered something. The last message she'd sent him. He opened Snapchat. Her account was gone. Or perhaps he had blocked her. His hands trembled. Get me the flight information. Tristan didn't move. Julian. Now. Even if you catch her, what are you going to say? Julian looked at him. For the first time in years, there was no arrogance in his expression. Only terror. I don't know. His voice cracked. But I have to tell her. Tristan stared at him. Tell her what? Julian looked across the reception hall. At the lavender flowers. The purple diamonds. The wedding she'd described. The wedding he had secretly ordered exactly as she'd imagined. Because he had remembered. Every single detail. He had spent the past month pretending the decorations were for Victoria. They weren't. They were for the girl who had once sat beside him in the garden and described her dream wedding while laughing. Lavender. A purple diamond. petals falling from the ceiling. A beautiful dress. A family gathered around her. Julian had remembered every word, because he had loved her, not as a man loved a woman, but as the uncle who had raised the little girl he'd promised her dying parents he would protect. And 6 months ago, when Hazel had texted him those 3 words, he'd panicked. He'd thought she was becoming emotionally dependent on him in an unhealthy way. So, he'd done the one thing he thought would force her to become independent. He had destroyed the only home she'd ever known. And now she had left it forever. Julian suddenly turned. Cancel the reception. Tristan caught his arm. You can't. I don't care. Victoria is your bride. Julian froze. Slowly he looked T. 3 hours later, Hazel woke briefly. The plane had crossed into another time zone. Her head throbbed. She reached for the glass of water beside her seat. Her phone was already off. She didn't know why, but suddenly she felt uneasy, as though she'd forgotten something important. She closed her eyes. A memory surfaced. Julian standing in a lavender field, his hands covered in dirt. A little girl beside him shouting, "Uncle Julian, more flowers." He had laughed. "You're going to bankrupt me." She had thrown herself into his arms. "Then I'll love you more." Hazel smiled faintly. Then the memory disappeared. She couldn't hold on to it. She touched the window. Outside was nothing but endless sky. "I'm sorry," she whispered. She wasn't sure who she was apologizing to. Perhaps to the little girl she'd once been. Perhaps to Julian. Perhaps to herself. Then the phone in her bag vibrated. Hazel frowned. She had forgotten to turn it off completely. She pulled it out. One message. From an unknown international number. She stared at it, then opened it. There were only 4 words. "Please don't leave me." Hazel's breath caught. Another message arrived. "I know now." Then another. "Please come home." Her eyes filled with tears. But she didn't know who had sent them. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then another message appeared. This time, only one sentence. "Hazel, it's Uncle Julian." Her fingers began to tremble. And for the first time since boarding the plane, Hazel broke down completely. Because somewhere thousands of miles behind her, the person she'd spent 6 months believing didn't want her, had finally realized she was leaving. And for the first time in 6 months, he was afraid of losing her. Hazel stared at Julian's message until the words blurred. "Please don't leave me." Her thumb hovered over the screen. Then she typed, "You don't have to worry. I'm not coming back." She deleted it. She typed again. "Congratulations on your wedding." Deleted. Finally, she locked the phone. She couldn't do this. Not now. Not when she had finally managed to let go. A flight attendant noticed the tears on her cheeks. "Miss, are you all right?" Hazel forced a smile. "Yes. I'm just tired." She turned toward the window. But 10 minutes later, her phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a call. The name on the screen made her heart stop. Uncle Julian. She almost declined it. Almost. Then the call ended. A second later, another came. Hazel pressed answer. Neither of them spoke. For several seconds, there was only breathing. Then Julian's voice came through. "Hazel." She closed her eyes. "Congratulations. I didn't marry her." Hazel's fingers tightened around the phone. "Don't say that. It's true." Victoria must be devastated. "Victoria knows." "Then you should go back." "I don't want to." Hazel swallowed. "You have a wedding. A company. A life. I have you." The word struck harder than any accusation could have. Hazel's breath caught. Julian continued, his voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting you." She said nothing. "I thought if I pushed you away, you'd stop depending on me. I thought you'd eventually build a life of your own." A bitter laugh escaped her. "So, you decided to make me hate you?" "No." His voice broke. "I decided to make you believe you could live without me." Hazel stared at the clouds. "And did it work?" Silence. "Yes," she whispered. "I know." Julian sounded like he was crying now. "And that's what I can't forgive myself for." Hazel closed her eyes. 6 months ago, those words would have been everything she needed. Now, they were almost meaningless. I'm sick, Julian. I know. I'm dying. I know. I might not survive the surgery. I know. Her tears finally fell. Then why are you calling me? Because if you die, I don't want the last thing you remember about me to be me telling you to have some self-respect. Hazel covered her mouth. I want you to remember the castle. Her shoulders shook. The lavender field. She cried harder. The candy shop. Another breath. And the stupid little red bicycle you wanted when you were 7. A broken laugh escaped her. You remember that? I remember everything. Hazel looked down at her trembling hands. I don't. Julian went silent. The doctor said I'll keep forgetting things. I'll remember for you. She squeezed her eyes shut. I can't come back. You don't have to. What? I'll come to Switzerland.
No.
Hazel. You have your company. I have employees. You have a family. You are my family. You have Victoria. There was a long silence. Victoria gave me the ring back. Hazel's heart sank. Julian, the wedding was never what you thought. Then what was it? He exhaled shakily. Do you remember telling me about your dream wedding? Hazel didn't answer. I remembered every detail. She looked at the photo Tristan had sent her. The lavender, the purple diamonds, the falling petals. I wanted to give you that. Her heart broke all over again. Why? Because I knew you'd never ask for it. Then why was Victoria wearing white? Because I thought I could move on. He laughed bitterly. I was wrong. Hazel stared at the dark window. Julian, I'm not the same girl anymore. I know. I don't want to spend my last days waiting for someone who might change his mind again. I won't. You don't know that. I do. His voice became firm. Because losing you once was enough. Hazel couldn't answer. Then Julian said quietly, I'll be waiting when you land. Her eyes widened. Don't. I already booked a flight. You can't. I can. Julian. I'll sit in the hospital corridor if they won't let me into your room. She began crying again. I'll wait outside. Stop. I'll wait a year. Please. I'll wait 10. Her voice finally broke. Why? Julian answered without hesitation. Because you waited 6 months for me to remember how much you mattered. The line went silent. Then the captain announced that the plane would begin its descent into Zurich in 20 minutes. Hazel wiped her tears. Julian, I'm here. If I don't make it, don't. If I don't make it, she repeated, don't spend your life blaming yourself.
He didn't respond.
Promise me. I can't. Julian, I can't promise something I know I won't be able to do. Hazel smiled sadly. You're still stubborn. So are you. For the first time in months, she laughed. It was tiny, weak, but real. Julian heard it, and on the other end of the phone, he began to cry. When Hazel finally landed, she didn't see Julian. For one brief second, she felt relieved. Then she realized someone was standing near the arrivals gate. A tall man in a dark coat.
His face was exhausted.
His hair was disheveled. He looked nothing like the powerful Julian Vance who had appeared on every billboard in the city that morning. He looked like the man who had once carried a feverish little girl through the rain. Hazel stopped walking. Julian saw her. Neither moved. Then his eyes fell to the suitcase in her hand. And finally to the photograph of her parents tucked carefully against her chest. His face crumpled. He walked toward her. Hazel instinctively stepped back. He stopped immediately. He didn't touch her. He only whispered, Welcome home, Hazel. She looked at him through tear-filled eyes. I don't have a home anymore. Julian's eyes reddened. Then let me build you one. She shook her head. It's too late. He nodded. I know. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. A tiny purple candy. The kind he used to buy for her when she was little. He held it out. I brought you the last one. Hazel stared at it. Her lips trembled. I thought I'd eaten my last one on the plane. I know. She looked up.
How?
Because I was the one who arranged for them to be handed out. Hazel froze. Julian smiled through his tears. I wanted everyone in the city to have a little happiness today. His voice cracked. But the only person I wanted to give one to, he looked at her, was already leaving. Hazel finally reached for the candy. Their fingers touched. And for the first time in 6 months, Julian didn't pull away. Neither did Hazel. The candy trembled between Hazel's fingers. She stared at Julian. You shouldn't have come. I know. You should be at home. I don't have one. You have the Vance estate. That stopped being home when you left. Hazel looked away. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to tell him that 6 months of cruelty couldn't be erased by one airport apology. But her body betrayed her. A violent cough tore through her chest. She doubled over. Julian's face changed instantly. Hazel. He reached for her, then stopped himself. Can I? She nodded weakly. His hand settled against her back. The coughing became worse. When Hazel finally straightened, there was blood on the tissue in her hand. Julian saw it. His face went completely white. But he didn't panic. He simply took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. We're going to the hospital. The specialist is expecting me. I know. You called Dr. Miller? I called everyone. Hazel looked at him. You always were terrifying when you wanted something. His mouth twitched. I want you alive. She lowered her eyes. I'll try. No. He looked directly at her. Don't say you'll try. What should I say? Say you'll fight. Hazel gave him a tired smile. Fine. She looked at the purple candy in her hand. I'll fight. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and winter air. Dr. Miller was waiting. He shook Julian's hand but immediately turned his attention to Hazel. Ms. Vance, we need to begin the preliminary tests immediately. Hazel nodded. Julian followed. A nurse stopped him. Family only. Julian froze. I'm her uncle. The nurse looked at Hazel. Hazel hesitated. Then she whispered, let him stay. Julian's eyes closed for a moment. Those 4 words nearly destroyed him. The examination lasted hours. When the doctor finally emerged, Julian was sitting alone in the corridor. He stood immediately. How is she? Dr. Miller removed his glasses. The cancer is aggressive. Julian's jaw tightened. But there is still a possibility. How much? I can't give you a percentage yet. Then give me something. The doctor studied him. She needs surgery immediately. When? Tomorrow. Julian nodded. Do it. Dr. Miller frowned. It's not that simple. I'll pay whatever it costs. This isn't about money. I know. Julian's voice dropped. It's about whether she gets another morning. The doctor was silent. Then he said, there's something else. Julian waited. Her psychological state matters. She believes she's alone. Julian's expression changed. She isn't. She needs to believe that. Julian looked through the glass panel. Hazel was asleep inside. Her face looked impossibly young against the white pillow. I'll make sure she knows. When Hazel woke, Julian was sitting beside her. She blinked. You stayed. I promised. You don't have to. I know. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she whispered, did you really cancel the wedding? Yes. Because of me? Because it was never supposed to be my wedding. Hazel frowned. What does that mean? Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened an old photograph. It showed a much younger Hazel standing in the lavender field. She was holding a handful of flowers and grinning at the camera. Behind her stood Julian. He was covered in dirt. Hazel stared at the picture. I don't remember this. I know. He smiled sadly. You were 8. She touched the screen. Why did you plant so much lavender? You said it made you happy. A tear slipped down her cheek. I forgot. I didn't. She looked at him. That's what scares me. What? That one day I'll look at you and not know who you are. Julian's eyes reddened. Then I'll introduce myself again. She stared at him. Every day. Every day. What if I forget my parents? I'll tell you about them. What if I forget the castle? I'll take you there. What if I forget the lavender? I'll plant another field. Her lips trembled. What if I forget you? Julian leaned closer. Then I'll make you love me again. Hazel froze. Julian immediately corrected himself. Not like that. A sad smile appeared on his face. I mean as family. Hazel looked down. I know. For a while, neither spoke. Then Hazel whispered, Uncle Julian? Yes. I'm scared. He reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. So am I. I don't want to die. His fingers tightened around hers. You won't. You can't promise that.
No.
He swallowed hard. But I can promise you won't face it alone. Hazel closed her eyes. For the first time since her diagnosis, she allowed herself to lean against someone. Her head rested against Julian's shoulder, and Julian sat perfectly still, terrified that even the slightest movement might make her disappear. The next morning, Hazel was wheeled toward the operating room. Julian walked beside her. She looked nervous. Do you remember what you promised me? To fight.
Good.
She smiled. And when you wake you. 3 days later, Hazel opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was white. The second thing she heard was someone breathing beside her. She slowly turned her head. Julian was asleep in the chair beside her bed, his head resting against the wall. His hair was disheveled. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked exhausted. Hazel stared at him for several seconds. Then she whispered, Uncle Julian? His eyes opened instantly. He was beside her in seconds. Hazel. She smiled weakly. You look terrible. A laugh escaped him, half relief and half a sob. You scared 10 years off my life. I've only been asleep for 3 days. Exactly. She looked around. Did it work? Julian nodded. The surgery went well. And the cancer? We won't know for a while. Hazel closed her eyes. Then I guess we wait.
Together.
She opened her eyes again. Together. Months passed. The cancer didn't disappear overnight. There were more treatments, more scans, more frightening nights. There were days Hazel couldn't remember what she'd eaten for breakfast. Days she forgot conversations. Once, she woke up and couldn't remember Julian's name. She looked at him with frightened eyes. I'm sorry. Julian smiled. You don't have to apologize. Who are you? He sat beside her. I'm Julian. She frowned. Julian who? He smiled. The stubborn man who built you a castle. Something in her expression softened. The castle. You remembered. She smiled. And the lavender? Still growing. Hazel reached for his hand. Then I'm okay. A year later, Hazel returned home. Not to the old Vance estate. Julian had sold it. Instead, he had built a smaller house overlooking a vast lavender field. At the edge of the property stood a single cherry blossom tree. Hazel stared at it. Why only one? Julian shrugged. You said Victoria liked cherry blossoms. Hazel smiled. And what happened to Victoria? She's happy. Really? She married someone who actually remembers her favorite things. Hazel laughed. Good. She looked toward the lavender field. Did you plant all of this? Julian nodded. You said you wanted it. I don't remember saying that. I do. She looked at him. You really remember everything. Someone has to. On Hazel's 22nd birthday, Julian gave her a small box. Inside was a purple diamond pendant shaped like a lavender blossom. Hazel stared at it. You kept it. I had it made before your surgery. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought the wedding was supposed to have this.
It was.
She looked at him. What happened to the wedding? Julian smiled. It became something else. What? A promise. He placed the necklace around her neck. That no matter how much you forget, I'll remember enough for both of us. Hazel touched the pendant. Then she hugged him. For a moment, Julian simply stood there. Then he hugged her back. Not too tightly. Never too tightly. Because he had learned that love wasn't about holding someone so they couldn't leave. It was about giving them somewhere safe to return to. Years later, Hazel stood in the lavender field with a little girl holding her hand. Mommy, is this the castle? Hazel smiled.
No.
She pointed toward the hill. That's the castle. The little girl gasped. Can we go? Hazel laughed. Of course. From the porch, an older Julian watched them. His hair was streaked with gray now. His hands were still rough from gardening. Hazel turned toward him. Uncle Julian. He looked up. Coming? He smiled. Always. Hazel took her daughter's hand and ran toward him. For years, she had believed goodbye was the ending. It wasn't. Sometimes goodbye was simply the moment you finally understood what you had been given. A family,
A home.
a second chance. And in the lavender field where a little girl had once dreamed of a future she thought she'd never live to see, Hazel finally understood. She hadn't lost everything. She had survived. She had learned to love herself. And most importantly, she had finally learned that she was never as alone as she believed. The wind moved gently through the lavender. Hazel closed her eyes. She could still remember the first message she'd ever sent Julian. I love you. This time, she didn't need to send it through a screen. She turned to him and smiled. I love you, Uncle Julian. His eyes immediately filled with tears. He smiled back. I know, Hazel. And beneath the lavender sky, surrounded by the family she had once been certain she would lose, Hazel finally went home.